Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. So welcome to User Testing's webinar today. My name is Jeffrey Tay. I'll be your host for today. Today's webinar focus and title on building great product and experiences. We have invited key experts, speaker, provide you deep insight on how to build great product and experiences using latest CX, UX, and UI best practices. So today, we're going to kickstart our webinar. Kumar is going to provide you some insights as well as presentations. Thereafter, we're going to deep dive into discussions with four experts, I would say, or subject matter experts in the CX, UX, and UI space. Okay. I would like to encourage all of you to be as interactive as possible. You're welcome to raise your hand, ask some questions, turn on your cam, and share among your peers today. All right. Okay. Next up, we will kickstart these sessions by opening speech and introductions from Kumar Valkyrie. Kumar, I understand. Also, Kumar is actually Asia Pacific Vice President from User Testing. Kumar, in a past, I think, 3 years, pandemic has either accelerated and changed the landscape of UX, UIs, and CX practices. So what have you seen so far, and what has changed?
Hey, Jeff, thank you. And can you see my screen?
Yes, I can see your screen.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you, good afternoon. And I see many familiar faces, thank you for joining, really appreciate it. Quick introduction, I'm Kumar. I lead the Asia Pacific for user testing. I'm based out of Singapore. I launched the user testing operations in APAC right in the middle of the pandemic. So that was 2.5 years ago. And all that I have seen actually is change, right? So, when we talk about taking the guesswork out and then, having certainty, I just keep wondering about what we have been through in the last 2.5 years. So right in the middle of the pandemic, the good news is that, we have been able to really grow very quickly. And that's because of the changing environment. And I think it talks volume about the relevance of the customer experience, user experience, and how that's ever more relevant than any time before. And we saw actually our own company going public. So we got listed in New York Stock Exchange. And I don't know how many of you have heard the recent one. We actually are now acquired by Thoma Bravo, one of the largest private equity investors. And we are now merging with the User Zoom. So it will be one combined entity of user testing and User Zoom, which I'll talk about it after a point of time. So, certainty, right? So this is something that actually is, it's highly desirable. It's something that we all want when we are building great experiences. Having said that, when you look at actually building any great experience, be it on the product side, user experience side, or in terms of marketing experiences, one of the things that actually we all know is that uncertainty is actually part of the game. So one of the surveys actually says that, 50% of the rework actually is basically the cost associated with that. So 50% of the cost we don't know, and it is wasted because of the rework. Even if we were to really save a part of this, it's a significant saving in the process of actually building great products and great experiences. The question is why we do not have certainty. So there are multiple reasons for this. I think one of the key reasons over here is that there is a constantly changing environment, pre-COVID, post-COVID, the way the world is changing right in front of our eyes. And the products are actually being built and the experiences are being built faster than ever before. The world is only accelerating in terms of building new products as well as the new experiences. And when you look at this actually from the lens of the designers, developers, as well as the experience creators, making decisions at this faster pace at every stage of the development process means you are making decisions all the time. And these decisions have material impact in the way the final picture is going to look like. So a couple of surveys actually, these are the outcomes. 55% of the product managers are frequently guessing when making product decisions because they do not have the end customer feedback or the target audience insights at the right time in the right place. Similarly, when it comes to prototypes, 62% of the high fidelity prototypes are not validated with the target customers. And if you really look at it, the reason for building the prototypes is basically to evaluate the validity of your concept and your design and the experience with the target audience and the target customers. So, and why is it so, right? Why there is a struggle to really connect with the customers? The reason is because we are trying to connect with the customers in flight. So product managers, 45% of them really struggle to arrange feedback meetings with the customers on time when they're actually going through this design process. And 65% of the designers do not have the resources to help them gather the customer feedback on designs at the right time. And this slower time to insight is something that is not really helping, because without feedback, what happens is that actually we make some costly mistakes. And these mistakes actually tend to be really pretty expensive mistakes. They not only cost money to the companies, there are some examples that are here in the screen, be it Adobe case study or CNN Plus. So these are actually some of the glaring examples on one hand. But I think more important than that is that it actually creates a damage on the brand image and the perception in the market as well, in addition to the millions of dollars that may get wasted in the development cycles. So the challenge is actually there is a huge cost that is associated with these mistakes, and the cost to correct a problem increases rapidly with time as you go through the development process, right from wireframing stages to prototyping stages to design, build, iterate stages. The earlier we are able to correct the problem, the better off it is in terms of return on investment and in terms of savings and building this certainty into the process. So what is the missing piece over here? So if you look at it from a large organization perspective, we typically have multiple data and analytics that are coming to us, right? So CRM is a very good tool for actually understanding what am I doing with my customer. So a Salesforce, CRM tool actually gives us that insight. And then product analytics typically gives us, what is our customer doing with my product really? So that part of the analytics is available typically. And then there are multiple survey management tools which can give us what is the customer sentiment and what's going right and what's not going right. But the missed piece in this whole thing, we do believe, is a customer actually pretty much shadowing, or the customer set shadowing the designers and developers during the entire product development and design process, and being able to empathize and then be able to say, what is it like to be my customer? So the empathy part of the human insight is one of the key ingredients which completes this picture in terms of being able to really do this in a more certain fashion. One of the case in point over here is Rothy's, which is a retail US region mid-sized company. So as you can see here, one of the things that they have been able to do is really ingrain the human insights right from the prototyping and design stages into their engineering process. And what this has really resulted in for them is 90% reduction in engineering cost and time. And this is something that actually is really helping them stay more competitive in the marketplace on an ongoing basis. So this is sort of actually the food for thought that I wanted to leave behind for today's conversations. So again, my request to all of you is let's have a lively conversation. Please feel free to challenge, question, share your own examples. And I'm really looking forward to a dialogue on these topics. Thank you.
Thank you, Kumar. I saw there's some other people some other participants just join us as well. Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Jeffrey Tay. So I do encourage everyone to turn on your cam if you can't. Just mute for now. If you do have any questions or things like you want to share, just raise your hand and turn on your mics and just go for it. Or you can put it in the chat box. We'll go through it with the questions later. So I'm going to say hello to Benjamin, which I didn't say hello just now. May, hi, Carmens, Joseph. How are you today? All good? Hi, Andrea. How are you?
Very good. Thank you.
If I miss you, because the list is quite long, we have over 40 people right now. I didn't expect that many. Okay, right. So I'm gonna start sharing. Just now, as you can see, we have Kumar doing introductions and opening speech. So right now, we're gonna delve into our in conversation with our expert today. Okay. Now, I spent roughly about 2 months preparing this particular event. When I started, I know nothing about CX. I'm actually a professional host in the area of IT and IT cybersecurity and also enterprise technology. So in the past 2 months, I learned a lot from Amanda, UT team, Dineth and Gaston and Becky teaching me and go through with me what CX is all about, as well as the developments and trends whatsoever. And with that, also, did some research and come up with some questions or discussions that I like to highlight. And I hope this will bring a lot of insights to all of you. However, combine all the experience that our attendee have today. I think you guys are a peer and also a colleague and subject matter experts. Feel free to ask any questions or share any best practices you have. I may pick one of two participants today to share some of you your own experiences. I hope you don't mind. It's just helping the CX and grow the CX community. So first up, we have like to introduce our panelists today. Kumar, with your presentation just now, there's some questions I also ask you as well. Could you stay a little bit longer? So for some of the questions that I will ask you, would that be okay?
Absolutely, Jeff. I will stay on.
Okay. Right. So we have Becky White, Head of Design Research from Canva. Hi, Becky. How are you today?
Hi, everyone. Really excited to be here. Thanks so much for joining.
Thank you. We have Gaston Gunek, Global Head of UI, UX and Design System from QB Insurance. Hi, Gaston.
Hey, how are you, Shabli? Hello, everyone.
We have Dineth Mapar, Director of Product Design from Airwallex. Dineth, say Melbourne coffee is better.
Hi, everyone. Great to be here, and thanks for having me. And yes, I think Melbourne coffee is better.
All right, no worries. Okay, so last but not least, we have Amanda, Warmadam's Solution Consultant, Asia Pacific from User Testing. Amanda spent almost, an hour going through deck after deck, teaching me what is CX and everything like that. Thanks, Amanda, for helping me understand and putting together this particular show as well. Hi, Amanda.
Thanks, Jeffrey. It's great to be here.
Okay, great. Let's just kickstart. Again, if you have any questions or best practices throughout the question I asked, feel free to raise your hands and then we go forward. Yes? If it's yes, can we get a raise of hand? And can we give an applause and turn on your mic to all our experts and our speakers for today? Thank you for joining and stuff. I think I can't hear anything. Thank you. All right, question number one. I think this Becky, perhaps you should take this one. So by now, change is inevitable. So change is constant, right? I think we learned for the last 3 years, changing our strategy, building our products as well as experiences. So that say, what are some of the more recent trends, expectation or standard you have seen emerge in the past 2 years that require CX, UX, and UI professionals to adapt? Becky?
Thanks, Jeffrey. This is a great question. Hi, everyone. I'm Becky. I lead the design research team at Canva. Just for a bit of context, our research team is about 10 full-time researchers, but part of our remit is also to help others in the business conduct research. So product managers, designers, product marketing managers, sometimes even engineers. So we're helping them also conduct research using platforms like usertesting.com and others. So yeah, I mean, I've been in the tech industry for over a decade now, mainly looking at SaaS products and a few of the big trends that I'm seeing. Well, first, the one that I was going to share, Kumar actually stole my thunder, but was the speed at which product teams really need research insights to make those decisions. So what I'm seeing is, the opportunities to conduct these traditional, 6 to 8 week or a couple month long discovery projects are really rare. And teams are trying to build these new features really quickly, and as a result, having to make decisions really quickly. So a few things that we've been doing at Canva to help with this. One thing is researching in sprints. So taking that traditional study and breaking it down into pieces so that we can sort of drip feed insights to the product team so that they can sort of build alongside us, taking those insights and starting to work more on the designs and starting to speak with engineers about technical feasibility. Another thing we've been doing is more continuous research, so continuous discovery, or something that we call research rhythms, which is a bit like speed dating, where we get 5 participants in one morning, and several teams have the opportunity to conduct research with them in a sort of rapid pace. We've also been using unmoderated research in really creative ways, which really allows us to speed up the time it takes to conduct research. For example, we've asked participants to share their screens and walk us through how they're using Canva today. Of course, recruiting for specific types of participants and asking them to zero in on specific features that we're looking at. We've also I guess product plug here, we have a whiteboard in Canva. So we've asked participants to even kind of map out things or create sticky notes of different processes and walk us through them. Things that we'd traditionally do in a moderated research session, but doing it in an unmoderated way really allows us to increase the speed. Another thing that I've seen, so that's speed. The other trend that I'm seeing is really just this decreasing attention span of our stakeholders. So, this is the TikTok generation. I'm seeing the term TLDR everywhere. So, gone are the ages of these long decks full of observations. So we're hardly ever doing a big reveal with our research. We're really sharing our findings early, bringing teams along on the journey. There's rarely a big surprise at the end, but that's great because the teams have already been able to kind of take that knowledge and run with it, as I mentioned earlier. We're using video clips a lot more, which are proving to be really engaging, and also doing less presentations and more interactive workshops. So those are just a few of the 2 big trends that I'm seeing lately in the research field.
Okay. How about other participants? With that questions, what are the recent trend or expectations and standard you have seen emerge in the past 2 years? Who would like to share before I go to you, Kumar? Because you did stole Becky thunder just now. Anyone like to share? Don't be shy. I know it's your first questions. Gina, can I get you to share a little bit?
I can relate to everything that Becky just said. I work in an agency, so I don't always have the luxury that working in a product team or client side has regarding time and budgets. So we're very much at the mercy of how much our clients are prepared to spend on the entire budget and take an element of that budget and ideally dedicate to usability testing. So do that as much as I can. I have noticed that customers are a lot more open to doing it these days, whereas when I've always included it in my proposals as part of doing design sprints, but it can be one of the first things to go, and that's happening less now.
Having to say that, from that agency background, your changes even a lot more because, you can't anticipate one's what, right? With that, Kumar, you've been helping a lot of clients as well yourself. What changes have you seen in the past 2 years?
I think Becky covered it very, very well and pretty comprehensive, and then Gina added to that. So a couple of things that I'm seeing of late, which I think is pretty relevant in my mind, is that the teams actually who are doing research are truly distributed globally, right? So one of the leading car manufacturers in Korea, their research team worldwide actually is launching research, sitting in Canada, and then doing the tests and then not figuring out. So I think the video first feedback and the ability to really sort of not have the distortions in terms of, like ethnicity, the language, the diction, that's becoming more and more important. And also the value of unmoderated tests because, of the time zone and other differences. Gina touched upon TikTok, China is definitely coming back. That's what we are seeing significantly right now as we speak. And there is definitely, the researchers are there sitting in mainland China, but are truly looking at how are, they're going to gather actually worldwide feedback, and then be internationally more competitive and come up with these international versions and stuff like that. I'm seeing that accelerating is the second part that I do see. Last but not the least is I think there is definitely an expectation of doing more with less. There are consolidations that I'm seeing, consolidation of tools, consolidation of roles, stuff like that actually happening. So how can one do more with less? How can research happen at scale and test more and test often at the same time? There are not many resources that are at one's disposal. So these are some of the things that I'm seeing across Asia Pacific.
Great. Thank you, Kumar. Thank you, Gina, for sharing, and Becky as well. All right, let's lead to our second question. While it takes many hands, teams even behind the scenes of establishing or optimizing different sales channel, marketing channel that is necessary to serve our consumer today. And we also know that consumer view our brand as one entity, okay? So the question is, how do we, perhaps this question goes to Dinev, okay? How do you facilitate a seamless experience across all channels, regardless, where or how your customer interact with your brand?
Yeah, great question, Jeff. I think Becky touched on this earlier. I think we're dealing with people who don't have that much time. We were in that TikTok generation, as Becky pointedly said. And so it's like your brand identity is really, really important. So for example, if you're getting an email, you probably have like half a second to know who this email is from and what they're asking for on the pile of so much different things that you're actually getting. So it's really, really important that there's contextual information and we're very clear what we're asking for and also like how much time this person might need to dedicate to this, right? So that's one thing. And I think where design can really help with this is having a consistent visual language. So when someone sees an email or some other kind of channel, they know immediately who it's from. So like Apple, for example, does a great job of this, so does Google. So you get to really see who it's from, and then immediately you can decide, okay, I do want to interact with this. So designers do think this way a lot around design systems, templates. So it's really, really important to have a visual, I guess, language to be able to communicate that with customers as well. The second point, I think, is having personalized experiences. It's very tempting to just blast customers with very general information because you think it's going to be a quick win, but it's actually not. Using data and insights at certain points of a customer journey is really, really important to get feedback back on improving that experience for future customers. So to give you an example, at somewhere like Guesswork, we think about a customer journey from a point where they see a social media ad where people might not even know who Guesswork is, but they just know that they can send money overseas for cheap or something like that. And then they click on that and then they go on a landing page and then they learn a little bit more about Guesswork, and we do a little bit more than like sort of transferring money. And then they might decide to sign up and go through a KYC kind of process, which can be quite long. Then they might like come back in and do their first transaction. To get to that point, there's a fair few steps, right? And it's really, really important when we do ask customers for feedback. It's not, so tell me, very generically, how was your experience signing up with Guesswork? Because I think it'd be really, really important to know what was, the easy part, what was the hard part. And if it might be even better if we actually know, if they spend a lot of time trying to provide like their driver's license or their passport, for example, to get themselves verified, we will have that data. So if we know that, why wouldn't we, surface that in front of customers and ask them how we would make that particular experience better for those customers? So, I think in short, it's about being contextual and personalized where possible and giving customers options in the long run. Okay.
Amanda, you also help a number of clients in your organizations building brand or interact brand as one. And So, so how do you help your clients facilitate a seamless experience across all channels?
I think it seems so simple what you just said, Denise, like testing the flow in the context and having as much like ecological validity as possible. But even zooming out of that, when I'm thinking about a seamless experience across channels, I'm a really big believer in Conway's law, that a disconnected customer experience can often reflect disconnected employee experiences or organizational design issues. So a good example of this is if you have an insurance company and you can pay your car insurance monthly, but not your home insurance. You can only pay that annually. And that's really a reflection of their internal organizational design issues or internal information silos that lead to an outward facing fragmented experience. And for me, that highlights two really important things. And the first is that internal sharing of insights and customer experience narratives. And like everyone's been talking about today, they've got to be shared in a way that's really digestible to those different audiences, not those, I think Becky talked about like the death of the long report or something, like essentially we can't be sending them 55-page PDFs. And the other one is having people in the organization who are thinking about designing the right KPIs and how reporting lines don't become decision bottlenecks that impact CX poorly. So really uncovering those broader zoomed out blind spots for me is one of the most critical ways to build better products.
Okay. Dinath, you mentioned that just now you, with the KYC process and whatnot, and people just join your or log into your website, you do collect a lot of information, right? How do you touch base on using this information to build better product? Really, how do you do it?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of different ways that we capture information. And sometimes when you get to a bigger organization like Airwallex, where we've got almost 5,000 employees now, you're going to get feedback in a lot of different ways. So you're going to get it from like customer service, you're going to get it from social media, you're going to get it from surveys within individual product teams. So you're going to get unfortunately, a real mess of information, right? What you don't want to do is just use one and then use that as gospel to be able to do your research. You're most likely going to be wrong. It's really important to be able to organize and categorize all these, the feedback from all these channels in a smart way. And that's when themes are really, really important. So like, maybe I take too long to complete my, process. That could be a big theme in the KYC process. Or maybe I don't want to give my personal information without knowing what I'm going to get at the end of it. I'm just making these up. But like, I think the point is like creating themes and understanding what are the big ticket items that we really need to invest time and effort in, rather than, trying to just kind of guess our way through it. And even to do research, I think it's really important to know exactly where we need to do the research, and using those insights from multiple channels is really, really important to kind of feel our way there, right? And I think the second point there is, I think this feedback or insights is really, really important with senior stakeholders, because when you go to meetings, when you plan roadmaps, it's really important to have these insights as something that we point to as why we need to work on certain things. Otherwise, it'll just be your opinion versus someone who's getting paid more than you's opinion. So it's really important that we have these customer insights to be able to tell a story of why certain things matter and why not investing or doing research on this will lead us down a bad path.
Okay. Among all the audience, is there any particular best practices you'd like to share, or any questions you'd like to ask? No? You guys are the tough group I have to work with? Is that what it is? Or you're punishing me?
I can ask a question, but
Go ahead.
So based on my experience, I work with a lot of large corporations, and one is in automotive. So there's multiple departments who all don't speak to each other. There's multiple agencies that do different work at different times. So when you talk about doing that seamless, consistent messaging across all touch points in corporations like that, how can you make that happen? Like what tools, how do you get them speaking to each other? It's a very big question, and I don't expect you to answer it. Any suggestions?
Either Amanda or Kuma. Amanda?
I don't think Kumar's coming off mute.
Okay.
Yeah, I think this obviously this is a conversation about organizational maturity and organizational design. So this really has to start from the top. You need that top level commitment to create that change. There's so many different frameworks for kind of growing broader CX maturity across organizations and embedding, CX into processes. Not to touch on all of them today, but we do have one specific to user testing, and really there's different actions that need to be taken at different stages. So, when you're in that sort of reactive kind of whack-a-mole phase, it's all about like ruthless prioritization, tying the work that's happening to value and showing how that's value is delivered, whether it's cost reductions, faster kind of processes or decision making, greater innovation, whatever it looks like, and bringing the team along on that journey. And then as you move through that kind of model at different stages, there are different actions that you can be taking. But to your point, Gina, it's a big question. Probably not one I'm going to unpick entirely today, but hopefully that sort of starts to
yeah, absolutely. You kind of
thinking there. Yeah,
mentioned a lot of things that we've discussed.
Yeah. Okay, good.
All right. With that, anyone like to share or ask any questions? I have a list here. I'm going to call out your name: Rod or Patrick or Narav, May, Kyle, Joseph, Chris.
Happy to jump in with a question. Ben Jones here from Access 4. I'm really interested in the panel's feedback or thoughts on how do you deal with customer fatigue when it comes to the information gathering and data analysis piece. So, we have customers who are constantly inundated by other suppliers, other vendors for data and feedback. Plus, even within your personal life, you can't seem to walk out the door of anywhere without being asked for a survey. So there's a bit of fatigue, and how do you deal with that to ensure that you still have adequate data to be able to make good quality decisions?
Who want to take that? Dinesh, I'm going to ask you to jump in a little bit, and then I'm going to make Kumar take it because Amanda, you already took one question.
Yeah, Ben, it's a really hard problem to have. I think, in today's kind of digital world, customers are bombarded with, give us more, give us more. It's almost like walking into a shop and you have like 30 salespeople pulling you left, right, and center. That's the analogy that I always use for that. And there's a lot of fatigue. I think that's where I think quality is better than quantity. And I think that kind of connects back to the brand. So, when you know that you're a brand that will listen to you, but not only get your feedback, but then listen to you, and then you see that improvement or changes. So as a customer, when I see a product, I'm using a product and I see continuous improvement of that, I feel like the feedback that I've given it has been valuable, and someone's actually thought about it, used it, and improved the experience for me. And then so the return of that investment for me is that I feel like I trust this brand. I'm more willing to give them my time versus say someone else. So I think that's where it's really important to both show and that we're actually making actionable changes based on your feedback. Sometimes customers don't realize it. It's actually really important to spell it out for them. So say, hey, this, for example, this year, here's all the updates we've done based on your feedback. So things like that are really, really important, I think, to let customers know that their time hasn't gone to waste. They've actually improved the life, the time, or the experiences of this particular customer.
Great. Thanks, Dinesh. Kumar, do you have anything to add? Becky?
Oh, sorry, I was just going to add on a little bit there. This is something that we think about a lot at Canva. And I think something I think about a lot is asking people for feedback and actively going out and getting it versus kind of listening and looking at the feedback that's already there, or the insights that are already there, I should say. So what I mean by that is, sure, we can ask for feedback. We can send out those email surveys that you mentioned, and Canva is guilty of that. But we can conduct moderated interviews. We can conduct user testing.com sessions. sessions. We also do in-product surveys, things like that. I do like Dineth's point earlier about really targeting those, so we're not just blasting it out to everyone. So it's not just like, surveys all the time to all of your customers, but actually targeting a specific subset and really zeroing and showing through that research, whatever it might be, that you know who this person is, you know what they do in your product, and you're interested in their personal experience. But then I think the other side of it is using information that you might already have, so you don't have to continuously go ask for it. And what I mean by that is doing things like looking at support tickets, looking at what people are saying on social media, or if you have other sorts of communities where people are discussing your product. We've actually, just not to mention TikTok again, but we actually do regularly look at TikTok as a source of feedback for our team, because people post on Canva, people post about Canva a lot. We also use a tool called Full Story, which has like actual screen recordings of real users using our product. And we don't have to, other than asking for their permission when they sign up to collect that data, we aren't really like bothering them during those sessions. And of course, we've got all of our product analytics. We run experiments. And so all of that is stuff that's happening in the background that we're not really like bothering our customers about, and we can supplement those other studies when we are bothering them with all of that information and kind of triangulate all of those sources. So I think that's another avenue that you can go down when you're trying to figure out how to improve your product or what decisions you should make.
Great. Now the group's starting to warm up. More questions, better. But this one leads to my next question for Gaston. It's about improve customer expectations. Given that optimization is a matter of constant evolutions, and so how do you think about getting ahead of your customer expectation to improve their experiences? Gaston?
Thanks, Jeffrey. It's a really good question, because let me start with an analogy. So online world is kind of like a wild world. And because it's a wild world, if you are in the forest, you need to look around 360 degrees. You cannot pay attention to only what you are doing. So if you are at home, you don't pay attention to anything because you already know what's close to you. So in an online world, we find out that sometimes they have 5 to 10 tabs open comparing ourselves or products with another company. So, and coming back to what Becky says, that it's too long and I didn't read, we try to find out not only what's happened with our competitors, but also what's happened with them and why we arrived to see what's happened in TikTok. So basically, I just listened to a podcast a few months ago that says that initially we were, keen to read. That's why we were using, Twitter or Facebook. Then read was too long, and then we tried to go to images. That's why we started using Instagram, and then we started to use Snapchat, which were kind of like animated images, and then we come back to TikTok because it's easier, just to the chest. And in all of this process, our brain need to do less process to try to process information. So just to come back to this, is we are not only competing with our competitors, we are competing with another companies that teach to our users what's a really good experience. We are competing with companies that, try to get users' attention and try to, use that in their favor. So companies like Airbnb, Uber, or Netflix, they have set a really high standard. So, and then what we try to do is we try to open our minds and try to learn from there, So for example, if we are taking Airbnb, they keep things really simple and accessible. So I have been working in travel before, and travel was a really complicated stuff just to get a travel, to get a hotel or a flight. Right now with Airbnb, it's pretty simple. On the other hand, Uber, make things more convenient. And also, after the user experience, after providing real-time updates, which kind of like a reduced anxiety, a few years ago, they started with this pin, which we can share the pin with the driver, so we know that we are safe, and that your kid can go there and we are safe. So this is basically to reduce anxiety. Anxiety that is produced by TikTok, is produced by a software that they currently use. So basically what we are trying to do is we try to open our minds. And of course, we have this combination with gathering, customer feedback, like, Dineth says, and using data-driven insight. But also we need to promote a culture of innovation, but especially about curiosity. Innovation is not enough for us, because with innovation, you will sit down and try to see what another people is doing. But with curiosity, you push yourself to try to get what's the best. And also cross industry, you can pick up what they are doing, everyone copy, and you need to improve that. So when everyone starts doing a search, first thing that you do, you go to Google, try to understand how Google, is doing the search. But I think this curiosity will push you to try to see Google and improve using that. And of course, we need to do some techniques like A/B testing and customer surveys insights and all of this stuff. But basically, I think this is a combination with a lot of curiosity and just go cross industries. I think it's important to try to go ahead.
Okay, great. That is actually quite a comprehensive answer for that. Thank you, Gaston. Anyone want to share some of your best practices or ask questions? And you can tell Gaston is very happy to answer.
Sorry, I speak too fast, but that's my problem.
No, it's all good. We have a little, okay. All right, so with that, let's lead on to a second question. So just now, I think Benjamin's was mentioning about survey fatigue or customer fatigue, whatsoever, and that's the thing. So spam, survey fatigue, junk mail, these are, widespread use, right? And the widespread nature of each of these terms perhaps highlights just how stale, I'm not even sure it's actually working anymore, to get customer feedback and initiative there. So the question is, okay, this one, Dinesh, can you, I think I need you to take that. So how do you ensure you're hearing truly a diverse and representative sample from your client, your customer, or your prospect as well?
Well, something like Airwallex is a little bit easier because I guess we're global. So, we've got offices in something like 16 offices. So it's a little bit easier to get more of a, I guess, culturally and also regional diverse feedback. I think it was a bit more harder when I used to work at Airbnb when I was in San Francisco, because a lot of the feedback very much came from, the Bay Area or that Silicon Valley kind of region. So it was really, really hard. So what we actually had to do was, the research team often had to go to these like kind of remote areas and actually speak to customers face to face. That was one like extreme way of doing it. Now I know that that's not a very practical way for everyone to be able to do research. So that's when like tools are really, really, really great. I'm not saying this because this is a user testing panel, but user testing is great for that kind of thing, because you can like specify who you want to get feedback from, and that's a great way of really doing it quickly. With any research team, and this was true when we had 100 researchers at Airbnb, was that what took a long time was getting a pool of diverse candidates, because that was really, really hard. And it was like a massive time crunch, especially when you're trying to build products quickly, and constantly, the PMs and other kind of stakeholders are always on your backside saying, when will this research be done? So it's really, really hard, because finding candidates is one of the hardest parts of research. So having, using these tools at hand, I think really, really helps to be able to kind of expedite and also be able to choose the kind of groups of people that you want feedback from.
Okay. Becky, I mean, with that, I know you also done a lot of research, a survey, but so how do you think about aligning audiences with opportunity or for improvement or market expansions? How do you guys do that?
Yeah, I guess this is definitely something that I think a lot about, and something that's a focus area for us for this year. Canva is a global product used by lots of different types of people for lots of different types of things. So managing all of that diversity is very challenging when it comes to designing research projects, reporting back on research projects, and just making sure we represent as many different types of worldviews as we can. I mean, I think I love the Airbnb approach that Dinesh mentioned of actually going to a country and being, you know, on the ground, experiencing what it's like for them conducting that sort of immersive research. We haven't gotten the opportunity to do that at Canva yet, but I would love to someday. Actually, I'm good friends with someone that used to work at Airbnb and got to go on one of those trips, and super jealous. But I guess something that we've been doing as sort of a proxy is leaning on our kind of regional partners. So we have small teams in each of these countries, and really partnering with them to conduct research and to really learn more about the country. They're not research experts, I should say. They're just, they're more like marketing experts. They're there to represent sort of that part of the world for our team. But we've really embraced collaboration with these folks and encouraged them to come and present about cultural differences when it comes to things like, you know, for us, we're looking at things like creativity and confidence when designing, the types of things that people want to be creating, and even trends in design, all of those things, and just making sure that those sorts of insights are constantly top of mind are something that we try to do a lot of. Another part of diversity is accessibility. So I think we could definitely improve here, but we have made some concerted efforts to try to conduct research with participants that use screen readers, for example. That's something that I personally think the research industry could be doing a lot more of, and would love to see some improvements there in technology. But yeah, that's my little plug. Maybe user testing can do something there, but yeah.
I was going to say, you're going to give a little hint to users testing team here. You know, this is what I want you guys to do. By now, I do need all participants, one of you guys to share, you know. So how do you guys, you know, make sure that you're hearing from a truly diverse representative sample, or, you know, how do you align audience together? Anyone want to share their own experiences, that what works and what doesn't?
I can mention something if you.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry. No, you go.
Patrick. Patrick, go ahead.
I would like to leave the space to you, so you can go first.
I was just thought it might be worth mentioning, you know, things a little further to the left of the design continuum in relation to research. At ASG, we do a lot of work around kind of, you know, understanding the problem space rather than trying to make something that already exists better. We're really, you know, the value mining piece is, you know, at a conceptual end. And so a lot of that we do in more like whiteboard environments. So, and I know today, I think the majority of work that's coming through user testing is further on the, you know, if you will, once we're in solution space and we're looking at ways to, you know, we've got this solution and we want to kind of modify it or, you know, replace it or something like that. But I think this, you know, this emergence of these, you know, you've got your FigJam and Miro fighting it out now is really interesting. And that whole area in design, I think, is where the growth is coming in terms of us being able to flip people away from thinking about products and services as systems and processes, and starting to thinking about them as experiences, even before those experiences, or, you know, what are those, you know, what are those problems that potentially, if we were to create experiences for, you know, what value they could deliver for our organization or our government or whatever it is. I think that's an interesting area, and I just put it out to user testing in terms of how they're looking to facilitate the type of users. So, for example, maybe you're looking at a problem space in government, maybe something like, you know, ambulance ramping, to get those people in to discuss, across the whole network of systems, how we could solve that and in these sort of, combined environments. I think it's such a very cool area. Anyway, I'll stop talking.
Great. Thank you, Patrick. Thanks for sharing. Gaston?
Yes, so we find out something really interesting. So we are in 27 countries in QE, but we are present in 145 countries. So that's a pretty challenge for us. And then we found out, for example, that in Asia, they would like to see something about the price and the premium before. So if you don't show in Asia, they don't proceed. And here in Australia, we didn't even imagine to do something like that. And then we say, like, what if we are doing some cross-country, feature? Says if that worked for Asia, why that cannot work for here? So we start doing this kind of like a cross-country, features to implement features that they really like in some countries, and we never expect to have that here. And to be honest, the experiment was pretty good, was very interesting, because it gave us more conversion, it gave us a lot of more exposure to try different features. And it was something really interesting. And we use our team because our team is in everywhere. So my team is in Hong Kong, in Manila, in US, here, and in another part of the world. So what we did is we try to use that culture, to see. And we have this experiment sometimes to say, like, okay, what if we do this, or we do that, or we do that? And it works. It was pretty well, to be honest. Because today, they are using Canva. I think they are using Canva in all over the world. And I don't think Canva will be so different from here to Spain or another country. So I think it's really interesting to do this cross-country experiment for us.
Right. Okay. Gaston is trying to sell Canva to the audience.
Yeah.
Becky, now with all the initiative that you mentioned, Becky, how do we turn all these feedback into actionable insight? So how do we drive it?
Yeah, I just wanted to go back to Patrick's question because I feel like that didn't get fully answered. Patrick, okay. I do feel like I mentioned this earlier in the session, and I don't know if you had dialed in quite yet, but our team does conduct a lot of research in those kind of earlier discovery research stages. And just to tie it back to something we've been discussing about the speed of which research is needed, sometimes we do go deep and we conduct more moderated interviews and things like that. But when we need to get deep into a problem space quickly, which is always a challenge, we have used tools like user testing to actually send participants to like a Canva whiteboard and have them actually like diagram, like steps that they take, or we'll ask them to share your screen and show us an example of the last time that you did this and walk us through, like examples. And I do think you can be creative in how you're using unmoderated tools that way. Of course, you can do it moderated as well, but yeah, I think there's lots of room for creativity. Jumping back to your question, Jeffrey, I believe it was about turning feedback into actionable insights, or turning all that feedback into actionable insights.
Now, all of the feedback.
Right, because I'll admit that I've thrown out a lot of different methods and a lot of different sources out there today, so that can quickly pile up into a lot of stuff to go through. So I do feel like this is the question, because we never just want to do research for research's sake. We do it to make better, more informed and confident product and business decisions. And there's lots of courses and online articles out there about how to analyze qualitative and quantitative data for insights. I guess something that I frequently mention to my team and others conducting research is about that term actionable insight. And I feel like the term insight is thrown around a lot these days in the business world, and it's really worth taking a step back and kind of challenging what is an insight and how are those being used at your company. In my opinion, like a piece of data, like a statistic from a survey, that's not an insight. A quote, not an insight. Even an observation, like people could use the feature successfully, I wouldn't say that's an insight either. Insight tells you not just the what, but the so what. So what does this mean? Why is it important? What should we do with it? And that really requires kind of taking a step back and reflecting, being curious, doing some deeper thinking. And that can take a little bit of time if you're not used to it. I've seen a lot of junior product folks conduct research and they stop at the surface level. You know, they'll say like X% of our customers are satisfied. And my response is, so what? So what do we do with that? Do we just keep doing what we're doing? That doesn't really tell us anything. You know, why are they satisfied? Why are the rest of the people not satisfied? What do we need to do more of, less of? That's where I feel like the insights really lie, and the actionable part of that term, actionable insights, comes in. So it's not just enough to do the research, but you really have to apply that critical lens of not just what we learned, but now what should we do with it and why is that important? So yeah, that's just
okay.
Yeah.
No, thank you, Becky. Amanda, I'm going to ask you, how do we eliminate all this false positive later? You know, but Gaston, you know, with Becky, what does Becky just say? Can you second it? What your best practices turning actionable information? I don't want to use insight anymore.
Yes, and I agree with Becky. That's the question, to be honest, because it's easy to get a lot of data. It's easy to try to analyze, but the key is how you analyze all the data, because getting data is not enough, you know. So we do have kind of like a 6 steps, but I'm gonna just stop in 2 or 3 of these steps because, you know, the initial is you are getting data from various like channels. Then you organize the feedback. That's why we are using user testing, which is pretty good. Contextualizing the feedback is something really important. And contextualizing doesn't mean like, I would like to know, you know, what's your age or where do you live? Is try to understand what they did before, what they did after. Is try to understand if they were really busy, if they are opening 20 tabs in the same time, if they go to our app because they recognize the brand, or if they go to our website because we are doing faster transactions, or we allow them to do the claim process easier and faster. And this contextualizing feedback, I think, is really important, because that's probably where you can find the trigger. And I agree. So you cannot stop in the surface. You need to analyze feedback. And then there are 2 steps that are really important, because once you get all of these, you contextualize and you analyze. Prioritizing insights, but are not based only in what's the best, based on only in your resources. You know, we are aware that we don't have the resources that Google has, so we need to try to understand why we do that and what kind of things they can do with us, what kind of cross-selling products can we do, and then we start to creating these developing action plans, and that's when, you know, all came, you know, alive. And that's why you just can really provide these kind of like actionable insights, because you combine what you can do, what you cannot do, your roadmap, you see, you know, what kind of things you can improve, what kind of thing. And also you start doing, I'm really fan of A/B testing, and especially because you can polish in days a lot of things, and you don't have to go to a change of the whole website. You do one change and then another one, then another one, and then you don't influence changes. So basically that, but to be honest, I don't think we have an only answer for that. It's the big question to me.
Okay. Kumar, I felt like you should answer this one. It's cool. Yeah, there you go. Sorry, I actually looking at a lot of screen at the moment. I encourage everybody to turn on your cam. If you have any best practices you want to share, go for it. But you know, Kumar, how do you help clients, especially, you know, turning actionable feedback into actionable insight? Amanda,
I'd love to jump in. Sorry, Kumar, if that's okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted to. I was just reflecting on Becky's point. She made a really good point about giving your audience the so what, like joining the dots for them, not forcing them to do all the work and the cognitive load. Like we're the ones who have to swim through the data and pull that out and communicate that in a way that makes sense, tell that story, and frame that potential business opportunity. I do think, though, even that sometimes is not enough. It's really frustrating, and I think it's a pain point of a lot of practitioners and product teams is that might not necessarily get acted upon. And so kind of the word actionable being in there with actionable insight, I personally have heard from customers that, of user testing, that there's nothing more powerful than seeing and hearing the customer or the competitor's customer, whoever it is, why they are or aren't buying the product, what they like or dislike. You know, to your example, Becky, like if they are satisfied, what are the things that we should do more of? What are the things we should be doing less of? And I think something like that sitting underneath what you're putting forward as the so what is just so, it's quite compelling. And sometimes you need that kind of fire lit, that urgency to make the insight actionable as well. Kind of inversely, not necessarily inversely, but on a similar line of thinking as well. It's about the timing. So the immediacy of that feedback can make it actionable. If you can get that piece of feedback or that information needed to make that decision when the business is making that decision, so at the speed and the pace that they need it, of course it's going to be more actionable because you've got it at the right time, as opposed to kind of weeks or months later when it's going to potentially go into the too hard bucket, which some organizations refer to as their backlog, unfortunately. And so what you don't want to do is be in a situation where you've done all that work and you've unpicked it and you've done all that sense making, but it's not then adapted or adopted by the business. So yeah, the timing and certainly like having the customer's voice there, I think are critical to making feedback actionable as well.
Okay, I just look at the time. With all the comments and answer, we only have 10 minutes left. So I'm going to quickly turn into the last two questions. I also like to thank Willem for sharing on the chat. Willem, you're also welcome to turn on your cam. If I don't see you there, I'm not sure you're here, or your microphones, that'll be great. So this is actually go back to Gaston. So in fact, Gaston helped me revise this particular question. So how do we utilize human insight to improve UX experience, or your UX experience? Gaston?
Thank you. Yeah. Look, like I think doing that together. So I saw many times, I think someone mentioned before, that there are not a conversation between some teams, like, the UI and the developer teams and stakeholders. And I think it's our task to educate developers and stakeholders and put them together and try to do it together. So before COVID, I have been working in a company where when you see the floor plan, designers were in one place and exactly in the opposite corner of the company where the developers they didn't talk each other because they didn't like each other because one of them was asking for, I don't know, pixel perfect, another one other stuff. But when we put them each other, they find out that they have a lot of things in common. And in my opinion, companies like Apple, they do an amazing user experience because developers and designers and stakeholders are all together. So to incorporate, the insights into the design process is doing that together. We need to use the insight from our analysis to inform our decisions and prioritize improvement. We have to do it together. So we need to prioritize and provide the rationale of every single decision. We need to share the results with them. We need to track that together. So developers, designers, stakeholders need to understand why these insights are being good or why these insights are not being good. So I think it's the only way. I'm conscious of the time, I'm going to stop pretty quickly, but I think that's the only way where we can create a culture about the user-centered design. Right now, everyone knows what's a good experience and a bad experience. You can tell people and they can go to Amazon and they can be really opinionated in what they like, what they don't like. Same comparison Amazon Prime with Netflix and so on. So I think it's working together. Sometimes you have an amazing library of development that can improve the performance. And that will just drive really, really good, experience. Before we were talking about branding, and we ran some questions before and says, if you are thinking in a bank, what do you prefer, faster transactions or a nice look and feel? No one say a nice look and feel. They only want faster transactions. So I think faster transactions is not because of the UI or the UX. Yeah, you can do less clicks, but basically it's performance, is development. So I think that's the point, try to work together to try to get the best of everyone, and then you can do that and you can kind of like improve this human insight to improve the UX.
Great. Willem, do you have anything you'd like to share? questions? How do you utilize human insight to improve your UX experience?
Yeah. So for us, I like to usually combine analytical and non-analytical, like anecdotal data together as well. So I'm constantly looking at stats as well to see, where people are dropping off and so on. But the thing is, data doesn't tell you why, and that's where you dive into really looking into where people get stuck. Also, when it comes to new product development, testing things early is a lot cheaper than later. So absolutely do your prototyping. Start with basic, wireframe, low fidelity prototyping, and then move your way up from there. So kind of like my brain dump of tips.
Okay, great. Amanda, follow up with that questions. You probably heard these questions from your clients too. So how do you help them improve their, UX experience?
Yeah, without kind of course, there's the sort of discovery space and developing those habits of talking to customers, continually uncovering the root causes of their pain points. There's all of those pieces of the puzzle, acknowledging, I think it was Ben earlier who said sometimes, you're tapping the same people on the shoulder, it's hard to get the right participants in the space. But one of the things I think is really critical that we sometimes forget to do in product is in the solutioning space to test the assumptions that underpin our features or our product. So under every solution that we potentially create, there's assumptions around value, feasibility, and viability that we need to test before we're able to put that feature or that product into the market. And I think that, that's just one of the critical things that I see really effective product teams do, especially in the innovation space, when they're trying something really novel or that takes a bit of a mind shift for the consumer to kind of adapt it. So that's something that I would add in, just being conscious of time as well. So wrapping up pretty quickly.
Okay, to wrap this up, my last question is for Kumar, also to wrap this up, so he started the introductions. Kumar, what do you see is the upside of investing early in a frequent customer listen?
Thanks, Jeff. So yeah, I'm being conscious of time as well. I think testing early and then getting the customer in and target audience in view is so valuable, and I'm quite sure all of us realize it and recognize it. What it enables is actually, it enables us to really come close to the pin right from the word go, whether it is in the conceptualization stage, wireframe stage, prototyping, all the way to your product development stages. So basically it minimizes the cost of the mistakes, and then be able to rework early in the cycle, and then be able to come closer to the pin as much as possible. And that's, in my mind, a huge saving in terms of both cost as well as efforts, and also be able to empathize with the customers right from the beginning of the journey itself. So I think it just actually gives a much higher probability of success in whatever we do, and of course, save significant costs of rework. Okay, with that, Kumar, I know that there's recent excitements from user testing and user Zoom. Can you tell us more about the user testing and user Zoom integration, and how do our CX and UX professional here can benefit from it? Definitely. So it's still pretty early stage of the cycle, but we are super excited about user testing and user Zoom coming together. So we both are now part of we both are owned by this private equity entity called as Thoma Bravo, which is $100 billion plus assets under management. So significant capability and ability to really invest and grow together. So we do strongly believe that there are complementing strengths that actually are going to really help our customers and the potential customers, right? So it's about really building this category and then how we can empathize with our customers better as we start moving forward. And Australia continues to be our key market for growth. So we are continuing to invest. So we have Amanda, we have solutions consultant, we have actually sales directors, cybersecurity, we have our data center and data residency actually in Australia. So we will continue to really invest in not just this, but also in building the contributor network, the panel, so that, like we become pretty mature within the market that we are relevant in. So that is the direction moving forward. So expect that, like you will be hearing more and more about this integration as we start taking this forward. So initially you'll be seeing some actually modules that are coming in as the optionals, like that you can add and then deliver and derive the benefit, such as contributor network and recruiting actually special, specific niche contributors that you want to possibly do. And then eventually, of course, like it will move towards how the great products can actually come together into a platform. Okay, great. Thank you. Arvind, I will address your questions in a couple of seconds. I'd like to thank Becky, Gaston, Denith joining us today as part of the in conversation with the experts. Thank you so much. Can we get an applause to Kumar as well? Amanda, I want you to stay for answering these questions. All right. If I can get everyone to turn on your cam so I can take a spotlight whatsoever with that. That would be great. Then I can get paid. Okay, great. Excellent. So let's just address the last questions that we have for Arvind. Okay, I want to be fair with everyone. So Amanda, I think you should take that. Biases. How do we eliminate biases to make sure that we are creating representing with the past questions, a correct representative. Amanda?
And just so this is the question from Arvin in the chat.
In the chat, that's right. Yes.
Yeah, cool. So incentivization for participation in research, is that what yeah, cool. So essentially, I see incentivization as critical to actually providing equality in the participant process. So it's probably a little bit of a contrasting view. That said, there is a lot of sensitivity required in crafting incentives. So knowing your market and knowing what your participants' time is. Especially for that. Oh.
I think I lost you a couple of seconds. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, so I was just saying that crafting the incentive to the right level is really critical. So understanding, what's appropriate for that particular participant in that industry and what you're asking them to do, so the duration of the session. You also can provide alternatives to incentivization. So it doesn't necessarily have to be money that you share with participants. Sometimes people are wanting to speak with like the C-suite, and they'll often put incentives into donations. And this can also be, put back to a potential recruitment bias. So you might have a sampling bias in the way that the response bias might be coming through. So it might be where you're looking for these participants, how you're screening them. Could be lots of things.
Right. Thank you. Arvind, I hope that answered your questions. I'd like to thank everyone joining today's webinar. Thanks, Amanda, for the answer. Andre Lames, Andreas, Arvind, Becky, Benjamin, Brandon, Carmen. I'm going to read out all the names. Okay, Chris, Dineth, Faisal, Joseph, Lani, Calvin, Kieran, Kumar, Majans, Patrick, Paulins, Rod, Shivani, Sonia, Tini, and Varan and Willem. So thank you so much for participating in this webinar. If you have any questions, like I say, about user testing product, or any more questions about how to make this work, whatsoever sort of thing, join us for our next round. Next round, we're going to do craft beer. Who's in this? All right, well, thank you so much. Here's the contact that you can reach out to if you have any question about user testing. Thank you so much for your participations. And do I get an applause? I applaud myself. All right, thank you so much. Talk to you guys soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, Chris. Bye, May. Hi, Kieran. You still there? All right, that's it. Done.
You can stop the recording, Jeff.